Have you ever really wondered what happens after a crime gets reported in India? I mean, what really happens? It's so much more than just police and courtrooms. Today, we're going to open up the case file and dissect the entire anatomy of an investigation. You'll see there are these three critical pillars that everything rests on, pillars that decide whether justice is actually served.
Okay, so a crime gets reported. Right then, a clock starts ticking. But what actually happens in those first few hours, and then the days, and even months that follow? Well, it's not chaos. It's actually a super structured journey that takes a case from a messy crime scene all the way to a formal courtroom. Let's trace that path together.
You know, it helps to think of the entire justice system like a structure that's built on three essential pillars. First up, you've got law enforcement, the police on the ground. Then there are the medico-legal experts, the people who uncover the scientific truth. And finally, you have the legal system, which weighs all the evidence. Here's the thing. If even one of these pillars gets shaky, the whole case can just fall apart.
So let's talk about that first pillar, the police. They're the first responders, right? And because of that, their actions in those first few moments of an investigation are just absolutely critical. Seriously, what they do, or maybe what they fail to do at the crime scene, can literally make or break the entire case down the line.
This right here, this is basically the blueprint for every single investigation. It all kicks off with the FIR. That's the First Information Report, which is the official legal document that gets the ball rolling. From that moment on, it's a race against time to collect everything, forensic evidence, witness statements, you name it. And only when they have solid evidence can they make an arrest, which leads to the final step, bundling up the whole case file and sending it to court.
Now this hierarchy, it's not just some boring org chart. It's the chain of command that keeps everything in check. You've got the DGP at the top, overseeing the whole state. That authority then flows down to the SP at the district level, and then to the local station's inspector. But you know, the real grunt work, that's done by the sub-inspector, the SI. They're the ones on the ground, piecing all the evidence together to build the actual case.
Police work is great for finding those initial leads, but modern justice, well, it demands hard proof. And that brings us to our second pillar, the science of the evidence. This is where the medico-legal experts, think of them as detectives in lab coats, come in. They provide the objective, scientific facts that can either prove a theory or show that it's a total dead end. These experts are kind of like the storytellers of the evidence. They're the ones analyzing injuries, performing autopsies, and running all sorts of lab tests to figure out exactly what went down. But you know what their most critical role is? It's often in the courtroom, where they basically act as translators, explaining all this complex science in a way that judges and juries can actually understand and base a decision on.
Inside the hospital itself, there are two key roles that are really important. When a case first comes in, it's the casualty medical officer, or CMO, who's on the front line, giving immediate care and documenting everything they see. But the person overseeing the whole medical legal process for the entire district, that's the civil surgeon. They make sure every single procedure is done completely by the book.
And all of that brings us to our third and final pillar, the legal system. So once the police have done their investigation and the medical experts have given their evidence, the whole case moves from the field into the courtroom, and that's where the path to a final judgment really begins.
Now, once it's in court, the case gets handed over to a whole new kind of expert, the public prosecutor. It's their job to argue the case for the state, using all the evidence that the police and the medical experts have gathered to try and prove the charges.
Okay, so the case enters the judicial system, but it's not just one big court. It's actually a tiered structure, kind of like a pyramid. And this design is so important because it makes sure that the seriousness of the crime is matched by the authority of the court that hears it, from really minor stuff all the way up to the most severe crimes imaginable.
The journey for most cases starts right here, in these subordinate courts. So a minor theft, that might be handled by a judicial magistrate. A more serious assault case, that could end up in front of the chief judicial magistrate. But for the really grave crimes, like murder, the case goes straight to the Sessions Court, which has the power to hand down the toughest penalties.
But hey, a verdict in one of these lower courts, that's rarely the end of the story. The system has this whole path built in for appeals. A decision can always be challenged, and that allows a case to move up the ladder, from the district court to the state high court, and sometimes all the way to the very top.
At the absolute pinnacle of this whole judicial ladder is the Supreme Court of India. As the apex court, its word is final. It's the ultimate decider of appeals and the final interpreter of the law for the entire country, period.
So there you have it, the three pillars of an investigation, the police, the science, and the law. each with its own really complex machinery. The whole thing is designed to make sure there's a fair and thorough process. But it leaves us with the ultimate question, right? In a system with so many moving parts, how do we make sure that justice truly prevails for everyone?